And let me take you to the breaking news report of the night in the New York Times, which seems to be saying that there are at least some members of the Mueller team who are telling associates that they believe that Attorney General Barr, in what he has written to Congress about the report, has in effect misrepresented the weight of the report.
Well, it's been my assumption, and we won't know until we get it, and I find it remarkable here we are almost 2 weeks out, and Barr is still keeping this report buried. But it's been my assumption that a 400-page report has an executive summary already. So, of course, it begged the question, why did Barr feel the need to release his own summary? And now, this is obviously someone who was hired for the purpose of squelching an obstruction of justice component that threatened the president. But nonetheless, why didn't he release a summary produced by Bob Mueller himself instead of trying to shape it through his own words? So I don't know what to make of the New York Times report. It is concerning. The best remedy, of course, is transparency. Let the American people see all of it. And ultimately, that's what's going to happen. We're going to fight this in any way we can, in any way we need to make sure that the American people get to see the product of Bob Mueller's work without the filter of Mr. Trump's hand-picked Attorney General.
Will your committee, you also have an interest in seeing the full Mueller report within your committee. Will your committee also subpoena the report if necessary?
Well, there are two investigations that were going on simultaneously. The counterintelligence investigation, which is how this all began. That is an investigation into whether the president or people around him were witting or unwitting agents of Russian influence. And then the criminal investigation. It looks like the Mueller report is predominantly focused on the criminal investigation. Here's who he charged, here's who he didn't charge, and here's why. It may not discuss the counterintelligence findings. If it doesn't, of course, that's what we're going to be pursuing in the Intelligence Committee, and we'll use whatever means necessary. Very analogous to Chairman Neal, who has a statutory power to get the tax returns. We have a statutory power in the intelligence community to gain access to any significant counterintelligence activity and findings, and we're going to expect the intelligence community and the FBI to live up to that statutory requirement.
Let me ask you something about Chairman Neal that Rachel asked me about, and that is why has the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee remained so publicly quiet and, unlike yourself, not doing any interviews about any of the work that he's doing in this committee, particularly this work about trying to obtain the president's tax returns? Have you had any conversation with Chairman Neal about why he's avoiding situations about this?
You know, I've certainly had conversations with Chairman Neal on the subject of the tax returns, but I'm not going to go into those conversations. I haven't talked with him about how public-facing he wants to be. But I will tell you this, looking at the chairman's letter and knowing something about the chairman, this letter, this request is very carefully written. It presents the strongest possible grounds to obtain those returns, and I think he wants to rely on what that letter says, because he knows that's on the strongest legal footing, and he knows the president is likely to fight this tooth and nail. But this leaves no wiggle room, no discretion for the IRS. They're going to have to comply. It is squarely within the chairman's authority to ask for these returns. And I think that out of abundance of caution and mindful that the president will seek to litigate this, the chairman is probably working conservatively with the advice of the House General Counsel to maximize our chances of success.
Do you want to see the president's these same tax returns in your committee?
You know, I'm deeply concerned with, what the tax returns might shed light on in terms of any conflict of interest, particularly vis-a-vis foreign parties. So if the president has investments abroad that are tilting U.S. policy towards Saudi Arabia or against other countries or towards Turkey because he's got a Moscow Trump Tower there, or any other illicit or financial purpose, then that is a counterintelligence concern for our committee. But that is a different issue than the one that Chairman Neal is raising, and I will defer to Chairman Neal on the basis he is seeking the returns. But, of course, that is the concern that we have in our committee.
And Chairman Neal has specified in his public statement, a written statement about this, that he has no intention of sharing the tax returns with any other committees. But there is, within the law, a House process for that. House passed a resolution authorizing your committee to obtain the tax returns, which is to say authorizing you. You then could see these tax returns. Is that something you would anticipate asking Speaker Pelosi to put resolutions you'd be asking her to pass so that you could get a look at these tax returns?
You know, I'm going to defer to Chairman Neal on that question because I think he's in the best position to be able to respond to what latitude he may have in terms of release of the tax returns beyond his committee. I'll defer to him on that. I can only speak for the interests of my committee, which is to make sure that U.S. policy is not driven by some illicit foreign purpose. Now, I do want to say also that what Chairman Neal is doing is helping to reinforce what had been an inviolable norm for decades, and that is that presidential candidates release their returns so the American people can understand whether there are conflicts of interest. And I think the American people have every right to know, for example, did the president push certain provisions for real estate developers in the tax cut bill because it would earn him tens of millions of dollars on his taxes? Or any other issue that is pertinent to the American people's interest in a transparent government and knowing that the president is working for them and not on behalf of his own narrow financial interest.
And Chairman, we now have a whistleblower telling us about the way the security clearance process was overruled within the Trump White House, and apparently now specifically to the benefit of Jared Kushner. What's your reaction to those reports?
Well, we are supporting the work that Chairman Cummings is doing to try to get to the bottom of this and find out why there were so many aberrations here, why there were so many overrulings of the professionals in terms of the security clearance process. We also have our own deep in this. Jared Kushner has probably the broadest possible portfolio of anyone connected to the administration. He's supposed to develop a Mideast peace plan. He's got jurisdiction over criminal justice reform and God knows what else. And he has also entered this administration with buildings that were deeply in debt, like that 666 property. And if he was seeking foreign financing, if foreign parties or sovereign wealth funds or foreign countries felt that he could be levered because of his financial indebtedness or for other reasons, that's of deep concern to us. So if those were the considerations that went into the denial or the attempt to deny him a security clearance and they were overruled because of a nepotistic interest of the president, then we're going to want to know about that in the Intelligence Committee.
And Chairman, we also saw this security breach of sorts. I'm not sure how you would describe it. This weekend with the arrest in Florida of someone who gets into the president's, basically his weekend home, which he also runs as a business. And she gets in there with using two Chinese passports as her identification. Turns out the Secret Service, on second thought, ends up arresting her because they believe she was there with malicious intent and in fact was in possession of malicious software and some of the computer hardware that she had with her. Your reaction to that and what we know about it so far?
Well, a couple reactions. First is a concern over the security protocols that she got as far as she did. Second is the concern over the number of cell phones, over the thumb drive. We don't know what kind of malware this is. Was there an intention to place the malware somewhere within a system at Mar-a-Lago? But frankly, the far broader concern, because this person looks like they might have been just an amateur for whatever reason, the broader concern is she was a guest or she was somebody attempting to pose as a guest. People can buy a membership. They're eager to sell memberships at Mar-a-Lago, which means that if a foreign intelligence service did want to penetrate, the far better way to do it would be to buy a membership and have a right to be there. That compound, that country club, Mar-a-Lago, what the president calls his Southern White House, second to only the White House itself, is going to be an intelligence target for every foreign intelligence agency worth their salt. So we know that those agencies are going to be deeply interested in Mar-a-Lago, and the fact that you can buy your way in and avoid what happened to this woman is a paramount concern. But even as someone not on a guest list, able to get as far as they did, waves a lot of red flags.
Chairman Adam Schiff, thank you very much for joining us tonight with your invaluable expertise.